waiting. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages. Welcome to Enforcing the Fundamentals with Doug Harding. We are back. We had some travel stuff going on. We are now all back in the country, safe and sound. And I don't think I watched a minute of hockey the entire time I was gone. Now, anybody that knows me knows exactly why he's laughing, because that's a minute of hockey sometimes is all I see in a season. I was down in Mississippi. Dad, you were off in Mexico. How much did you pick up down there? Do they have anything?
I go to my phone and find out what the scores were. And on series, I could pick up some of the games of all on, but we were pretty busy. Stuff that I was doing, we were going basically 5 mornings a week. We went from 6 in the morning until 8 at night, and then one morning we went from 4 in the morning until 10 at night, and then one morning we went from 8 until 2. So there wasn't a whole lot of time to do a whole lot of other than sneak some time in to find out what the scores were. But got home in time, or got back here in Canada in time to watch the Toronto Maple Leafs survive last night, which was good.
Yeah, I mean, that's that kind of shocks most hockey fans, really. I hear there was a lot of parties that were canceled in Toronto because the hockey wasn't over yet. So the end of season party had to get pushed back a little ways. Toronto's not used to that, but it is what it is. Good for them. I'm looking at the standings, and we got 3 Canadian teams into this next round. That's not too bad. I mean,
we do.
Unfortunately for Montreal, they ran smack into the Capitals.
Yeah,
that'll happen, but
Montreal played well. I saw a few of those games before I left, and I thought Montreal put up a pretty big effort for, a team that was late starting, getting their season rolling. But they finished up pretty strong. And the one game that I watched Montreal and Washington with, I thought Montreal played well. So kudos to them. They're headed in the right direction. And Edmonton, when I left, Edmonton was losing 2 games to none. And I'm going, oh, no. And here they came back in 6. That's pretty cool.
I mean, that works. It is what it is. Edmonton now going from north to south. I mean, they're pretty much in the same time zone at least, so you don't have that jet lag thing going on. They're waiting to start their series with Las Vegas. Winnipeg, just about the same thing. They got to go a little bit further south down into Dallas. Okay. Toronto is already
up.
That
makes a big difference when you're traveling, actually.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah,
travels. It can be a long day of travel. Most teams, I think, if they don't have their own plane, they are probably chartering a plane. So the rigmarole of getting through all of the nonsense at the airport is greatly cut down. Although I do kind of wonder how customs goes for these guys. That's an interesting question that in this day and age, I think. Toronto, same deal, down to Miami, but they're up a game. So good for them. Toronto.
They got one more game at home too. So going down to Miami up 2 would be really good.
Yep. And then I think the shortest travel right now is Washington and Carolina. That's not too far of a leap. So that's good for them. Those teams will at least have a little extra downtime when they're not traveling.
Yeah.
First round here. Let's uh, this one you started. You came in pretty hot on in our pre-show here. St. Louis, you were really
Yes.
high on them coming in, and they I don't want to say dropped the ball, but um,
No,
maybe
I mean
taken a
they
little by
played
surprise
against.
by Winnipeg. Winnipeg was not. It was not.
Yeah.
It's not a lightweight team.
No.
Somebody that's not as familiar might be leaning back on the old Jets that sort of had to leave town
Oh,
after a while.
Winnipeg, the best team in the NHL this year in the regular season. And when St. Louis, I saw they were playing St. Louis, I was a pretty big fan of how St. Louis played the second half of their season. I thought, there's something a little special in there. If anybody can beat the best team in the NHL, it might be them. And I thought
Hmm.
they actually had it. I was in Mexico and I hooked into part of a broadcast and or was watching part of a broadcast. And St. Louis was up 3-1 with, I think, like 8 minutes left to go in the game. And I thought, oh, you know what? Hate to see a Canadian team go, but if it's got to be St. Louis, I was glad it was St. Louis. And I got off the plane after sleeping overnight and found out that Winnipeg had come back and won in overtime. So the hockey gods weren't with our St. Louis fans this time.
No, they work in mysterious ways. We do have a shot to have a sort of an middle of the country series. I guess it's about as close as we get to a Subway series with Edmonton and Winnipeg in the Western Finals. That could be interesting.
Yeah,
Um, we've
that
talked.
would be very interesting.
It's
It'd be something to have Toronto and one of those two teams in the Stanley Cup finals. I'd be really interested to see how many hockey fans aren't hockey fans in the States anymore. It could take a while to get them back,
mm-hmm.
but
Yeah. I mean the
that hasn't happened. I don't know when the last time two Canadian teams played in the Stanley Cup final. I shouldn't have asked that question because that's going to take a little bit of research to find out. Are you working
um
at it?
a very little bit, I would suggest, because
Mm-hmm.
I have a button, and we will figure that out in just a couple of seconds. Um, so Dallas and Colorado, that was another 7-game series. You see much of that one?
It was, you know what? I know I did have a couple. Well, I know a couple of players that I've met and a couple that I've worked with that play in Dallas, and I know quite a few of the executive people in with the Colorado Rockies,
Mm-hmm.
and I knew that was going to be a good series. I actually kind of thought Colorado might actually come out in that one, um, but Dallas made a few trades that worked out well for them. That worked out well for them as far as that series went. So, and
Mm-hmm.
you know what? All of the series were really worthwhile watching. Sometimes you look at playoffs and one is playing eight, like, like Winnipeg and St. Louis, and you figure, oh, that's going to be a blowout. Well, uh, it certainly wasn't any blowout. And
Mm-hmm.
I think Winnipeg, I give you kudos for standing up underneath the storm because well, St. Louis was a team on fire in their hearts, that's for sure. And
Mm-hmm.
Edmonton, like I said, I didn't see hardly any of that series other than the scores. So I'm not quite sure how that went. So that's going to have a big influence over the Vegas series. Edmonton Vegas is how up is Edmonton and how healed they are. And but Edmonton got stronger in that series against LA as they played. So uh, all every series this year, the possibility of looks like extraordinary hockey season of playoffs, like extraordinary games. Anybody can win if you're more prepared and you're more willing to put out whatever you have in terms of your team effort and your individual efforts is going to pay and going to need to be paid uh, to be successful. So
Right.
it's going to be a great playoff series, all of them.
Yeah. I mean, I'm just looking at the overall here, and it looked like the West was a little tighter. We had 2 game 7s, 2 game 6s, but over in the East, it was 3 game 5s and a 6 game series. So
Yeah.
Florida, Washington, Carolina, they went in, they took care of their business.
Hmm.
Nobody's been swept yet this season.
You know.
Uh, Toronto and Ottawa, it's a shame to have the 2 Canadian teams in that bracket pounding it out, but it is what it is. It would have been nicer to see it spread out, but it's not like it's a lottery. It's not like somebody's just picking randomly. This is based
Hmm.
on your performance,
Yeah. Yep.
and that's cool. Anything stick out to you from the Eastern first round as as sort of a notable?
Well, there's a couple of things that I kind of watch because they involve players that I know and that I've worked with. I was feeling a little bit bad for Logan Stankoven when he was traded out of Dallas because I knew Dallas was going to be a really good playoff team, but he was going to North Carolina, who
Mhm.
I know I think Rob Brindamore is probably one of the best coaches overall in the NHL, and he had a pretty good. I only got to see the scores from a couple of the games, but I know he got a couple of goals in their first win in their game 1, and it's nice to see a local BC boy, do well. But he's an extraordinary player. I had quite a bit of involvement with BC's best ever program with Logan
Mhm.
on the team, and he was very special as a kid. He was very involved with trying to keep other players up, and he wasn't arrogant at all about who he is, and he's that same way as a person, in his community, and he certainly is the same way in terms of his contribution on the teams that he's played in. In Dallas, he scored a lot of goals, and then he accepted a role where, he would have to learn more parts of the game, and scoring kind of closed down a little bit for him, but not his effort. So I say I have to be a big favor of Logan, big favorite person of Logan, and whatever he can accomplish, because he's a pretty special guy, And Vegas has got a couple of players that I know, and Edmonton has more than a couple of players that I know. So
Mhm.
it's all heartfelt when it comes to them knocking heads together. But I'd like to see, Carolina certainly got it tough playing with Washington. I think Washington is so physically gifted, and they have a really big work ethic. They're going to be hard to keep from coming out of the East, and
Mhm.
yeah. So I hope it's Edmonton again or Winnipeg coming out of the West. But if I was picking 3 teams that what I thought might be there, those are probably the 3 teams. Uh, Not putting down anybody else's team,
No,
but
of course not.
those are the ones that I know a little bit about and that I think I would like to see do well.
All right. I mean, that all sounds fairly logical to me. Being the
Oh
deep,
my
deep
God, did
scholar
you
I am
just
on
say
this,
that
I
about
know,
me?
right? Don't. I said logical. I didn't say you were right. Calm yourself.
I blew the St. Louis prediction, but I really wanted to.
Yeah.
I didn't even know who St. Louis was going to be playing in the playoffs at that time
Mhm.
because I
Yeah.
really
St.
hadn't
Louis was
looked.
in that position
And
where they were.
I just really liked how they were playing the last month and a half in the season. And I thought anybody playing them better look out. And as it was, the best team in the NHL kept their season together by like a second. I think they scored the tying goal with like 1.6 seconds left to go in the
Mhm.
game. So that's a pretty slim margin.
Yeah, because I think it was Winnipeg and Minnesota were very close to swapping positions. I could be wrong, but they were all sort of in that. The last couple of points was going to determine
Mm-hmm.
where they were going to end up seated for the first round. So it could have very easily been a different setup.
Yeah,
Lewis might have had better luck with
I would
it.
have liked Winnipeg, Minnesota better than I did St. Louis and Winnipeg. So it is what it is.
Yeah,
It
I
is
mean,
what it is.
what can you do? And there have been some shenanigans on the ice as well, which is unfortunate. It's not ballet. It really isn't. Now it's not as I don't want the term brutal is not the word I'm looking for particularly. It's not as physical as it used to be in the game, but as we discussed last time, um, with that unfortunate UFC inclusion in the Vancouver, Minnesota game, these things do happen. And I am just going to see if I have the video here somewhere. You sort of. We're just dealing with the McDonald's commercial. We're going to go and have a quick look at this, courtesy of somebody on YouTube. I don't know. The one I had queued up basically failed on me earlier, so we're just gonna. Let me see if I can find it. There we are. I found it. Good for me. So here we are coming in with this, and let's see how this goes.
Stopped there by Stolars. Puck is still free, though. Leafs on almost a 5-on-3. Another jam play. Stopped by Stolars, who is down and hurt.
Yep.
Slow to
Little elbow to the head.
Had his goal stick knocked out of his hand and his mask taken off. But the Leafs, if nothing else, this is a great piece of acting. If it's
with a man down.
I
think we're going to see a little tip
with Jordan Bennington last night as well.
There it is.
You don't want to be sent to the quiet room as a goaltender. So Stolars, I think, let it go. But this, I mean, this is a cross check, Joe. We got Joseph.
That's little brain rattler there behind the ear.
Yeah. Your coach is saying crowd the net, and the players going, "Oh, how can I endear myself to the coach the most that I possibly can?" Well, we'll upset his game. We'll give him a little shot to the ear. Only it was a little more than a little. You gave him a big shot to the head. So, yeah, Stolars was playing great. I don't think without the
and speaking of unnecessary roughness, I've had my foot mauled into the desk here. Here's Mox wants to come in a little rough with us.
Anyway, so yeah, you know what? Everybody's out to win and accomplish however you can. Somebody can say, well, that was an accident. He was pushed into him. But I played a lot of years. That was no accident.
Yeah.
Sometimes you wait for somebody to touch you in the right position and you flaunt yourself forward with unnecessary force. So, you know what? They were doing what they could to get the goalie off his game. And they did. They got him out of the game.
They got him. Yeah. I mean, as you're saying, sent to the quiet room, definitely sounds like he's I mean, they used to say you got your bell rung, and then they figured out that, that's a concussion, and these are not good. Yeah. We've had this discussion on the show before. He caught that elbow right in the back of the head. Well, no, kept sort of behind the ear there.
Ear, yep.
Which is still,
you know what? It's not. Coaches have. I wouldn't say it's the control they should have last, but they don't really have. They have split crowds, NHL people who spot for possible concussions, and I think Stolars pulled himself out. But I'm pretty sure one of the NHL spotters in the crowd would have said there's a potential concussion, and they're very, very cautious now with players' health, anyway, Toronto hung on, shot to the head or not.
Yep.
How to go Leafs, how to go Canada, one more game.
It didn't work out well for Florida. If Florida had won the game, there might be an argument, and I'm not saying hurt a guy, It's a rough game, sure, but nobody should be hurt, especially deliberately, especially in an offside
in
sort of
that case,
manner.
Matt, I don't think he's deliberately trying to injure him and put him out of the game. Nowadays that intent isn't there, but they're certainly coming in with the intent to confuse his issues and make him a little more susceptible to, offensive attack. So for me to say that, I think, he could have certainly withheld the elbow shot, but I don't think most players, when they think about it, are into completely taking a player out of a game or a series, or they shouldn't be. If they are, they shouldn't be playing. But get in his face, rub his face in it. Boston Bruins did that to Vancouver. They were down 3-0 in the Stanley Cup final, and then they just started rubbing Vancouver's face in it. And little kudos to Vancouver. They stood up to it. Well, we'll take it. But the spark kind of came out of their game a little bit, and look what happened. So you do a little face rubbing and finger biting, and then all of a sudden you've got a 3-0 series lead turned into a Stanley Cup championship for the other team. So I'm a little bitter about that.
So, hey, sometimes, that one player not there is really the key thing, especially when you're dealing with a goalie. They got to maintain their focus. Some goalies do great at it. Some goalies can get rattled. Around Vancouver, we are aware that a few years ago, if you were able to rattle their starting main event franchise player goaltender, it was going to turn into a hockey game out of the 80s, and you were likely to hit double digits. Who happens to, I believe he's on the coaching staff of Florida now.
I think he's actually a part owner. I'm not sure of that. I know he's on their staff. I think they didn't have enough money to pay him, so they gave him part of the franchise. Again, I don't know that for sure. But that's what happened with Mario Lemieux.
Yeah.
Didn't have enough money to pay him and needed money to keep going. And Mario stepped up and took the responsibility of giving the money back. And
pay your bills and feed your family and get by. That's not a terrible thing to get, ownership of a professional sports team, even in some small percentage. That right there solves a big problem for players after their playing days are over. I mean, they may not know what to do right off the bat. They may or may not be good on commentating, but commentating and coaching jobs, it's not one for one for every player that comes into the league and goes out. So if you can get it, great, go for it. Even if you turn around and sell that piece of the franchise down the line, that's not going to be cheap. Let's get into a comment here. According to the National Post, Sam Bennett said it was they hit with the elbow was really just a bump. And he didn't even really notice there was any head contact. Now, let's take him at his word for right now.
Mm-hmm.
What
they're not saying is what Sam's history is. Sam is not a nice boy who just shoots pucks in the net. Sam is, he's a go get it, aggressive. He's the other side of Marchand. So not the other side, the same side. They play hard. They play for their teams. They do everything that they can to win. Whether they admit it was intentional or not, or it was just a bump. Well, you don't give somebody an out of the game concussion with just a bump. So
I mean, that's fair. I don't know his reputation. In a video with Sportsnet, he said, "I'm trying to score. The last thing in my mind is thinking about elbowing him in the head." Now, I didn't really see a wind up to it, so I don't think it was completely malicious.
No,
my point was going, they're not unprotected elbows either. we have discussed this a little bit on air and over many, many years. These guys are in armor.
Yes.
They are, when you add and it's not just padding, there's plastic pieces in there. I'm not 100% sure the makeup of this particular gentleman's equipment or what the standard is anymore, but in a rough game, maybe. Still, it doesn't seem right to me. It was a very interesting spot to catch an elbow.
There's not much flexibility in an elbow pad and a hockey player's uniform. They put a little bit of cushy material on the outside, but I mean, they might as well be steel. It's as simple as that.
That's exactly where I was going with that. So, I mean, it's feasible, and it may just be that he's really, really good at disguising being a less than honorable player, but it wasn't. At first notice, it's not like he just reared back and came in with a big elbow from 2 blocks down the road either. It was
sorry about the background noise.
Yep, you clearly got something going on there.
We're staying at somebody else's house right now, and their phone is going off. So
yep, we know, as long as it's just a phone and it's not an alarm of some sort, you're in the correct house, right?
Oh yeah,
you're not in the neighbor's house by accident.
No, everybody cleared out of the house because I was doing this because I didn't want any noise. I guess that didn't work very well.
You should have left somebody to answer the phones.
Yeah.
All right. So, I mean, the NHL season is no stranger to offside hits and dirty play. The playoffs are no stranger to that because, I mean, the bottom line is if your starting goalie has left the ice due to a concussion and is vomiting in the dressing room, you got the backup goalie who, may be rattled, may be cold, definitely is going to be cold coming into the game at that point. Some backup goalies come in, step up, and it's like, oh, no. You're the starting goalie now. You're on a roll. It sounds like we're going to get the starting. His name just walked right out of my head. He's coming back for game 2. He said he wants to be back for game 2.
Yeah.
I guess we'll all see how this turns out. Florida is not a lightweight team. I would imagine that. And I'm not saying they're being told to go out and deal with Mr. Bennett in some sort of untoward fashion.
That would be a silly thing.
I would imagine everybody's watching him now real close. And it sounds like he was probably already being watched real close given his personality and tendencies. So I don't see this as being you did it by accident. I think they're going to take this personally, especially a team like Toronto that is not known for winning 5 games in a playoffs, period. Not period, but at all in any given year. So I do have a little bit of information. We're going to go back a few minutes here. On the last all-Canadian NHL final.
Oh, yeah.
So we're going to play a little guessing game.
Absolutely.
How many kids do you think you had when this game happened, when this series happened?
How many kids did I have?
I mean, you only have 3 options that I'm aware of.
Yes.
0, 1, or 2. That I'm aware of.
I'm just trying to think of the years. 1? You
had 2.
2.
It was the 1986 Cup Finals. Montreal beat Calgary.
All right, 86. That's right too. Dougie Gilmore played on that team.
Yeah. Sure did. So we're coming to almost 40 years.
Yeah.
If they can pull it off this year, if Toronto can squeak through, and then one of either Winnipeg or Edmonton squeaks through, 39 years.
Wow.
I mean, that's impressive. And honestly, I think it would make a lot of executives a little nervous because I heard a lot of weird stuff asking me this last week from people all over the U.S. about how big hockey really is up here and some of their thoughts on the game. And I'm like, you like football, right? You like the rough? Yeah. And I'm like, why aren't you watching hockey? It is faster. And I'll tell you, the hits are different, but when they hit, whoo.
Well, you have momentum too. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, guys just skating or skating, 10, 12 miles an hour. And those guys that
Mm-hmm.
are really skating hard and fast are doing close to 30 kilometers an hour. And
Mm-hmm.
you add that they're 200 plus weight, and all of a sudden you're
Coated
looking at
in
the kinetic
plastic.
energy of a train
Yep.
on train. So
Well, yeah, I mean, they're 200 plus, and then you put the gear on them.
yeah.
And then you add those hard pieces like
The armor.
yeah, force is mass times velocity squared or something like that. And so for every ounce you have,
Yeah.
you have a
Yeah.
lot more force coming into somebody. And you don't have to look too far. You just watch how those boards behave when you got 400, 500 pound of hockey player crashing into them. The glass is much better these days than it used to
Yeah.
be. But I mean, you go back in time, you can watch the old Don Cherry tapes, and there's multiple instances a year of that glass going, nope, I'm done, I'm retired, and just dudes are in the first row.
Do you know why that is now?
They
put springs in the boards so that they give more. I know.
Okay.
I used to host the Vancouver Canucks for their training camp in BC in Duncan, and it was a brand new arena. It was a really nice arena, but literally they had put the boards up with concrete and steel. And after 3 years of having their training camp there, they had to move out because they were getting too many injuries. Players hitting the boards, and the boards having no give to them at all. And in all the NHL arenas, those boards are spring loaded, and the glass has a margin of movement before they actually pop out of their containment. So you can imagine when they do pop out of their containment, there's a pretty good impact on them. That's like saying, oh, my building is earthquake proof, and then having it fall down in an earthquake.
Yeah, and that'll happen. I mean, there is only so much you can do as far as what you apply to it. But when you add some better technology and thought to it, it's a thing. You can make it a little safer. Now, it's not like a trampoline turned on its side by any means, but it's safer for the players. It's going to add a little bit of give when that 500 pounds of mass hits with the force they're hitting with. Definitely safer for whoever's sitting right behind that pane of glass before it blows. And I keep saying glass for those of you maybe tuning in and don't have a clue. It's more of a plexiglass. It's more of a safety glass sort of thing, but it shatters like auto glass. So it's tiny little pebbles almost of glass as it comes apart. Not too similar from an NBA backboard.
It's tempered glass. Oh, I have a great tempered glass story.
All right, let's hear it.
I had a Canadian team over in Czechoslovakia. This was a pre-World Junior tournament going on, and we were invited to go, and so we went. And this is a team that Danny Hodgson played on, actually. And they took us to a new arena that they had built, which was next to the Sparta Arena, where the World Championships were going to be held that year. And we went on the ice for a practice, and one of the kids fired a puck, missed the net, hit the glass behind it, and shattered it. And we thought, oh my God, that's, whoa. And so we hollered for the ice guy, and one of the Czech Ice Hockey Federation people who had been watching us practice. What a waste. Anyway, he comes down, he says, no, don't worry about it. We've just got all of this glass in. we put you here for your practice because we want to know how, if there's anything that isn't going to stand up or we need to change anything. So he said, if any of your players can break the glass, it'll really help us find out whether the glass is
Oh,
good.
no.
We broke 18 pieces of glass in practice. Just we went on the, we had to go off the ice. They had to re-clean the ice. We had to come back out an hour later because of all the glasses on there. He says, go ahead, break all the ones you can. It'll help us know whether it'll stand
Oh
up.
my God.
They replaced all of that glass with something else for the world. So it was, that was my best glass story ever. 18 pieces of glass. Kids just stood there hammering pucks at the glass.
And they must have just had giant grins on their faces.
Oh,
when
they were killing themselves. They thought this was so cool. They'd never broken a piece of glass before, most of them. No, not the juniors. Not any of them had ever broken a glass before.
That
the only
must
glass
have just
we've
been
broken is when we get hit through them. But that was 1983 in Prague, Czechoslovakia.
Yeah, that right there is like giving an 8-year-old an unlimited card and saying, you got 30 minutes in the candy store, get whatever you can carry out.
There were a lot of very happy hockey players.
That borderlines on a physical reaction near the jockstrap region. As far as I could not imagine. It's like, we get to do what? Really? Let's go.
That's what it was.
Look what I can do. So I'm just scrolling through a few more things here. Have you heard about St. Louis Blues Torrey Krug?
No.
This is coming to us from NHL.com in their news section. The 34-year-old defenseman missed this season after having an ankle injury, and he is not expected to play again in the NHL.
Wow. I mean, I know him. I know the player by name.
Yeah.
Wow.
I
didn't even know what injury he was out with. I realized he wasn't playing. I thought it might have been an ACL or something like that. I did not know. An ankle injury. How bad do you have to break it to end your career? Wow.
I do have something I can read.
Yes, read, please.
So St. Louis Blues GM Doug Armstrong said that he isn't expected to play in the NHL again. I'm not expecting him to play, Armstrong said. He's hoping that I'm wrong. I'm hoping that I'm wrong, and he's pushing. But the surgery he had, it was very, very invasive. Krug was diagnosed with pre-arthritic changes in his left ankle. That was something the Blues said on the 6th. That he will be evaluated on July 16th and then reevaluated in 6 to 8 weeks after working to rehab it. There's a lot of uncertainty around him. So, I mean, it sounds like it wasn't even really an injury. It was just his body going, I'm going to go do this now.
Yeah, I don't know. I knew he was playing. I knew, and then he wasn't playing, and I had no idea. I hate to see that, like injuries that end careers. Mm-hmm. They make you your abilities less, and you've worked hard to get there. And with a little bit less ability, you're not there. They won't take a chance. That happened to Danny. I watched that game Danny broke his leg on the power play in front of the net.
Mm-hmm.
And Vancouver brought him back, and they played him in the minimum number of games to basically cancel his contract, which, that's kind of the way I looked at it. Maybe it wasn't that way. We'll have to ask him someday. But kind of made me a little bit sour but that's the way it goes. You're a professional athlete, and if you can't perform at your very best of your ability that got you there, then it can get you out of there in a hurry.
Yeah. So it says here he last played April 10th. So he is just about exactly 13 months out from his last game. He had a pretty good career, fairly solid, 13 season, 89 goals, 394 assists. So that's,
that's decent.
A good track record of having the puck and knowing where to put the puck. It's
The
not always
NHL
in the
Player
net, kids.
Association has a pretty good pension plan. I know they fought long and hard for it for many years to be able to get it, and players now that end their careers with injuries, it used to be in back in when I was a player, certainly not at that level, but you were done. You had no income, and you had no possibility of ever having an income other than go home and find a job.
Yeah. Well, I mean, he did okay. He pulled down about $6.5 million a season overall.
Yep.
So he's hopefully he's doing okay. Don't ever judge what you see on paper as how they deal with their money, because we've seen a lot of professional athletes blow through it, and sometimes blow being the key word, especially in the 80s. It looks like he was in the finals with Boston when they lost to St. Louis in 2019, then got traded to the Blues and was there ever since. Which, I mean, he got to the finals. He had a good run. I don't think any player wants to go out because their body has betrayed them. I mean, it's tough enough going out on an injury when you're like, if I was just a step slower, a step faster, if so-and-so hadn't stuck its stick here, but to have that kind of abnormality just pop up, it happens to people all the time. But the athlete mentality, I mean, that's at least he got 13 years, and that's more than a lot.
And he got paid decent for it. But in the long run, all the players, that no matter what money they make, even those who have discovered it is time to leave, don't want to. They, a big part of their life is the dressing room and their teammates, and you can grow up in a normal life and have friends and so on and so forth. But athletic teams, especially in physical sports, they adopt a real fondness for being there. Just being there is the big change in their life when they can't, even if they've taken care of and they have money. It's really disrupting. And I would say that's the same of most, team sport professional athletes. The thing that they miss most, no matter what money they did or didn't make, was the fact that they were in the dressing room. They were in the restaurants. They were at the special event meetings. They were at the special event periods. They're going to hospitals to visit kids. And, a lot of guys really like that. I mean, again, not having been at that level, but having been involved with elite teams and gone and done that. That's one of the things that I enjoyed the most. Like when I was the first time we were over in Czechoslovakia, and the second time I had a team over there, the team spent a lot of team touring. I spent a lot of time going around to their minor hockey locations for practices. I really enjoyed that. I couldn't really speak to him. It had an interpreter.
Right.
And I'm sure whoever the interpreter was, he lied big time about who I was. He's a Canadian.
Yeah, because I mean,
big time thing in Czechoslovakia.
For those that may be a little confused here, this is Czechoslovakia. This is before it split to Czech Republic and Slovakia.
Yeah.
It is part of the Iron Curtain. It was not necessarily super friendly to Western personnel of any sport or aspect coming over, especially if the NHL was really starting to branch out at that point, professional hockey period, because there were several leagues going on, to bring in more of the European players, to bring in the Russian players, the Slovaks, and wherever the good players were, to bring them over. So I'm sure, there was some concern of, what do you mean the Canadian guys out talking to our 15-year-olds? What age does he coach? 16 to 18? Get him out of there. Or don't maybe translate exactly what he's saying, wink, wink, nudge, nudge.
There's a lot of rules when we're over there.
I believe it.
I see the pictures nowadays of of Prague, and it's wall to wall people 24 hours a day. When we were there were very few people in the streets. We were warned specifically, to be very careful talking to any Czech people outside the circle of the hockey circle, because they could be government spies there to find out if you're carrying any electronic equipment and taping this and taping that. And we knew that our phones in our rooms and our hotel rooms were all tapped. We knew that. And, and the Czech Ice Hockey Federation gave us, all of this kind of information to try and get through it as easily as we possibly could. The Czech Ice Hockey Federation were fantastic to me, especially. And for me to request to go and talk to and go on the ice and pass out a few stickers of this and that and so on and so forth. And the kids absolutely loved it because we were Canada. They did know who Canada hockey players were. Hockey is a pretty big sport in Czechoslovakia too. And it was really appreciated to me. I mean, I talked to kids without really quite understanding, but most of them just stood there with their mouths open and in bewilderment. And I'm going like, this is celebrity treatment in our country, and I'm certainly no celebrity. But the team played very well, and all of our games were followed, and a lot of the games, the exhibition games, were done by radio, and all of our on ice in the tournament were televised, and they went out of our way to make sure that we didn't win, though.
Oh, I believe that. And rumor and innuendo was that Canadian hockey sticks were highly sought after.
Oh, do you know that story?
I know. We've covered it a little bit. I've heard this story.
That's a great story, and I think Danny is still pissed off today.
So anyway, you go right ahead and tell that story.
Quick speed. We're coming off the ice after beating Slavia's junior team. And the kids are all grabbing for hockey sticks and whatnot, and who's this forth. And Danny sort of indicated for the kid to come down, and the kid came down, and he had a whole bunch of crystal bowls and glasses and stuff. And Danny said, I want the crystal. I'll give you my stick. So he did. He gave the kid the stick, and he comes in the dressing room, and he's got these. I mean, we'd have been paying thousands of dollars for them in Canada. I mean, pure crystal from the Czechoslovakian crystal factory. I went and had one of the Czech guys go and get the kid and bring the stick back, and gave him the glass back. And as the kid was looking like somebody had shot him in the head, he turned around, started to walk out. I turned around and gave him a hockey stick. Didn't cost him any crystal. His mom wasn't going to kill him, and he had a hockey stick in the end. So, I said, Dad, you can't do that. And he said, why not? He wanted it. It was funny. I wonder with the World Junior team if Danny had made any deals like that too.
You know what? We'll have to ask him. I mean, you got gifted some, I believe, because I know there's a Voss that came home.
Yes. No, that was the win. We won.
That was the trophy.
Yeah.
I think I have that.
And we were evaluated. When I got it back, I had it evaluated at a local jewelry place. And Matt's disappeared on me. I'll tell the story anyway. Anyway, it was evaluated at over $20,000 for sale in Canada. And we had gotten it. It was the trophy for having won that tournament, which happened. So it was, I had it, and somehow it got broken. So I guess I should have taken better care of it. But yeah, we don't have it anymore. It did in some move, but it was evaluated at over $20,000, Matt. Did you break it?
I don't think it got broken.
It was a great big huge crystal vase, and it was all hand cut.
Yes,
all of it.
Oh, it was gorgeous.
And it was absolutely fantastic. In Czechoslovakia, I guess I have a lot of crystal, but in Canada, something like that was, and I took it to a jewelry place to ask them to evaluate it. And I told them where it was from, and it was stamped from the Czech factory, and it was freaking huge. And the guy said, I don't know if he ever really knew, but he said Czechoslovakian crystal from this company is worth quite a bit of money, and something this size, and the fact that it's a one-off piece, that there isn't another one in the world made like that because it was made specifically for that. He said it could be worth up to $20,000.
I think you may want to have a discussion with your local pastor, because I don't think it got broken.
If she's got it, more power to her.
Well, I mean,
it's broken.
I don't. You're sure it's broken?
It's got a big crack in it.
Okay. Well, still.
I think Greg was shooting a hockey puck and hit it or something. I don't know.
Yeah, I'm going to go with that one.
Oh, yeah, you're escaping the responsibility for that. I don't know. It could have dropped or broke, but it had a great big crack in it the last time that I'd seen it. So, yeah.
All right, so
we'll go and speak to God about it and find out if it still exists.
Go and pray on it next week. See how that turns out. Pray real loud. But careful, she's a little stressed out. So let's see here. So the season is over for many teams. We're down to 8, which means some people are getting the resumes out again.
Yep.
So let's see what we have in our news so far. There is discussion on a new Vancouver Canucks coach out there, whether or not, I don't think they've actually pulled the trigger as to whether.
That would be a huge freaking mistake. I'm sorry.
I would agree with that.
If they're saying, oh, well, we didn't make the playoffs because of this, that, and the other thing, and, they had some dissension in the room, which caused a team split, but I don't think it is of that kind of variety. It's just some years you got it as a player, and you hope that most years you do, and some years you don't. And there were a whole lot of, well, I wouldn't say a whole lot of, but there are people who underachieved that normally wouldn't. It could have been a group of people with an off year, but as far as the coaching goes, that would be it would be a huge mistake. Who are they going to replace him with? There are a lot of good guys, but for this group of people, and his mental direction to maintaining coherence in the dressing room, I think not a whole lot of people. I don't think anybody could have done any better, but every once in a while you get these people who, in the higher end of executives, and Vancouver has a few of them, who think if you don't beat the player with the whip, then, you're not getting the most out of the player. And
I mean, that will work with some people. I don't think it's an across the board thing. No. I think you have to know when it's the whip, when it's the carrot, when it's the stick.
When to
be Ted Lasso.
If you know the whip is going to work, go ahead and use the whip. But the way that kids are brought up nowadays, and elite athletes are brought up nowadays, I would say, other than motivation, the whip, you have to find a motivation that works, and they're not going to take the whip anymore. They just don't take the whip. Some guys in my day weren't strong enough to take the whip, and they were just thrown out on top of the garbage pile. And I know a lot of really good hockey players who could have gone a lot further and a lot longer in their careers, but they were soft that way. They could not, they could go up and they could play, but they couldn't be, how do I really want to say that? They really couldn't be chastised when they weren't playing well, because they were already chastising themselves. And
there
they
it is.
Add that on top of it, end of abilities, end of performance anyway. But I really, Vancouver has had some really good hockey coaches here in the last 20 years. They've had some that, that maybe be a little bit past who they are with what they're working in with. But if Vancouver is looking at, oh boy, we restructured to win the Stanley Cup from last year, I don't think the coach makes the trades and signs the contracts. He may have some voice, But if you're thinking the players that we had this year didn't perform for us, then maybe the players didn't have the ability to do what the Vancouver Canucks need, which goes back to the draft. What are you looking at in the draft? And you have to be team specific to both philosophy and ability if you're going to draft well. And I don't mean to pick on anybody because I got about 8 or 10 friends that are full-time scouts in the NHL. But they say it's a pretty tough life. Not only do they travel, the amount of responsibility that they carry. And if they're offline with what a new coach or a new general manager has in mind, then they're out of a job too.
Oh, absolutely.
Not easy.
If you're not a star locked in player, if you're not that franchise player, nobody's safe. Nobody at all, period.
Yeah.
One last thing that I'm going to bring up here as we're almost at an hour. We do have one GM that we know is out of a job now. Rob Blake is out in Los Angeles. It was announced by Luc Robitaille, that the team president, that they have mutually agreed to part ways. I feel like there's a lot more to that, and that's the politically correct way of saying
there's a philosophy interlock there that is not working well.
So this is a GM that's out right at the end of the season. Literally right at the end of the season, the Kings just dropped out, and I've lost the team in my head. Yes, Edmonton knocked the Kings out of the playoffs just the other day. So Rob Blake is headed for the printer to print off some resumes, although somehow I feel like maybe guys at that level don't necessarily need to. They just need to see who else
decide whether they want more someplace else, or I'm done. I'm going to go and buy a cottage on a lake and fish a whole bunch.
Well, that
I recommend highly.
Yeah, I mean, that could be exactly it. And usually that's announced as a retirement, though. But it could very well be that, hey, this other team is looking for something. It could be a person. We won't know until somebody writes a book. We won't know. Period.
That's true.
And even then, is that the entire story? I think Rob and Luke would probably have to write a book and cover that specifically in a chapter for us to know. But I mean, here's your GM on the way out. He's done. They got to find a new guy, and they have to find a new guy in time for the draft.
They'll be going
in time to start moving and shaking.
Unsigned Rick Tocchet, if he decides he doesn't want to coach anymore. I would think that would be.
That's an interesting.
We did it to Los Angeles by stealing Pat Quinn out of there. We had to pay for it because we cheated. But, you know what? It is what it is. I just think that getting rid of Tocchet is not going to make Vancouver's task to get to the Stanley Cup or win a Stanley Cup any easier. I think he gets, and he can't ask for more than this from a coach. He gets as much as he can out of the individual players in a team situation. That's my opinion. And could I be all wet? I'm pretty sure if you talk to any executive that in Vancouver that disagrees with that, they'd be more than willing to give you their side of the story. Well, this happened. He ate too many candy bars on the road or whatever it is.
I mean, that
some people just hunt for whatever idea they can. I hope Rick Tocchet wants to stay. And from what I've heard, he does and he doesn't. So obviously some sort of change is going to come or be made.
Well, and then, there's something about when you start dealing with punctuations on paychecks where you put that decimal and how many commas are in it. It can really be a mind changer because it is hard to look at some numbers and go, no, I'm good.
Yeah, that becomes more of an owner situation.
That
I
really
don't want to talk about Vancouver's owner situation.
Let's not do that because, we're a long way from the Griffiths. Let's just say that. All right, so we're about at an hour. Thank you so much. Welcome back to the country. You made it back from Mexico. I made it back from the southern U.S. It's fantastic. The sun is shining. The grass is riz, which means I have to
wonder where the birdies is.
Yeah. No, they're all outside. The cat's
They
at the window.
apparently
He's
are.
pointing them all out to me.
Okay.
We'll come back next week and we'll talk some more stuff.
Okay, sounds good to me, man.
We're gonna start running out of playoff games to talk about. So we might have to start looking at the upcoming draft, and
I'll start looking at that draft. Anyway, everybody out there, be great because you can.